All right, welcome to this episode of Real Estate Chat with Robert Eid and
John Perez.
welcome. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what is the cost of misclassifying something, putting something in a wrong terminology, and then grouping all of that together and misrepresenting or misunderstanding what that means and what are the implications of that on the market. We're going to start by loading up this article that was featured in the Toronto Star entitled, "What's a Home Worth in Today's Market? It's a Guessing Game That Often Goes Wrong." We scroll down and here's a quote by a fellow registrant within the real estate board, and it says, "Terminated listings, an umbrella term for those that have expired, been suspended, or canceled, or failed to close, shot to about 55% of listings in the Greater Toronto Area last month being January, compared to 19% in January 2022. Robert, well, let's start with, first of all, this terminology of terminated listings and how this particular registrant referred it to as an umbrella term, inclusive of expired, suspended, canceled, failed to close, and then all of this grouped together amounting to 55% of listings in the Greater Toronto Area. What does terminated listings mean?
Okay, well, I'm going to be a little bit generous. Since in the absence of quotes in the article that you just cited, I believe the author, a non-registrant, got it wrong. And she tried to summarize what terminate off the market. Unavailable is the term that we would use within the membership of the Toronto Real Estate Board, and wrongly used the term terminate, which we have a specific purpose for. Unfortunately, she has an article here where she talks to 3 different members, registrants, and none of them corrected her. Now, maybe she came to the conclusion after she finished her summary, I don't know. But the trouble with terminology is we insiders have terminology, and not always do customers or followers of the market or pundits get it quite right, because they're not in the same place. The famous one is ELF. We all the time put ELF on a listing, and the first question any buyer over the first time says when they read a listing is, "What's ELF?" And you say electric light fixtures, and they say, "Oh," you say that's a code, but it always makes sense. And so we can't be too critical. If they do it repeatedly or the whole article is off basis, then we will be critical. But in this case, the registrant was asked a question about why are there so many unavailables relative to actives on your database. Now, nobody keeps track of unavailables because unavailables sometimes get canceled and relisted. So they're not unavailable anymore, but they still count as off the market. So when I saw this, I said, oh, what are we going to do to straighten this out? Can we get mad about it? No, we can just point out that it's a silly mistake that people who were not asked about it didn't correct. So the umbrella term unavailable means everything that is not available. Everything that's available might be sold conditional, so that it's technically available. You can look at it, but it's harder to buy it than if it was just wide open for sale. Things that fall off the market, deal fell through, we don't keep track of those things because they're an insignificant portion of the market. Now, if we look at the chart that I've been keeping track of, because I'm very interested in terminated lists. No matter what somebody might think or might say or might use the terminology wrong, if we use the terminology right, then they'll have a basis for correcting themselves in the future. So what we do monitor is inventory. We get a snapshot at the end of the month of how many properties are actively for sale. And then I do a chart that shows what the 5 and 10 year average of that same month, the end of January in this particular case, end of February, I'm estimating, was for the last 5 and 10 years. So here we can see that February projected, we're 2/3 of the way through, so we won't be too far off. I was off by 7, I think, last month, or 3% or 10% off the long-term average for the month. So is this a great month? Is this a great year? No. So is it a little bit slower than sometimes? Yes. Okay, so perfectly normal. Now, if we want to look at terminates, I've been tracking terminates relative to inventory because I was trying to come up with a ratio of how many of the terminates eventually get relisted. And it's impossible to do, but I still have the data going back to March the 1st of last year, and doing a rolling 30-day impression on the Saturday of every week. I said, okay, how many terminates were there in the last 30 days? And did it all the way down. How many actives are there? as of today, and then came up with a ratio. So the minimum was like 24% and the maximum was 52%, and the average was around 37%. So of all of the actives at that time, it did max out about a year ago in April, May, June of 22, when everybody was freaking out and canceling listings and putting them on again and not knowing generally what they were doing. And so the board did come out with finally a metric of a relist share report. Now they don't push it. They don't put it on the front page of the MLS, but it is published. You can get it. And I've done a tabulation, which I think if we go to the next one, is my tabulation of this going back to when it was done in May. And there's an average, and it's done by each region gets its own tally. And the way they do it is they take all of the listings and then they find out how many were relists. They do it by an algorithm, and then they take that number of relists as a percentage of the whole. Now, that's not how you do it. You find out what the net number is, and you look at the relists as a percentage of the net number, and that's what you come up with. So in this case, the red, we see that there's a ratio of somewhere between 24 and 42% of the new listings are relisted. And so there's a padding of a tremendous amount in the new listings. Now, this is a very significant reason for examining terminates, but not the way it's being used as unavailable in the article. And our final one charts this very same information and says there is a gap, and depending on whether it's a peak month or a slow month, there will be more or less. I had tried to do it by just taking a relationship of 65.5% of actives are terminated, but that's not what it is. So since that May of last year, we know what it is, but they just don't report it. For example, last month, January, there were 1,532 of these do-overs where a listing was canceled, terminated, relisted with the same owner, same company, and same property, and put through the system again. And the net number was 6,000. So that's like more than a quarter. And it's a distortion of the market to look at terminates that way. So I'm sure that's not the intention of the author this time. The author was trying to come up with why is the market the way the market is? Is it because people withholding their property from the market? How can I find out about that? So she asked the question of what about these properties that are off the market, that are being withheld? And that's the answer she got, because that's the wrong question that she was asking.
And the key takeaway here for those of you who are watching Real Estate Chat, please do subscribe, click like if you like this video. Make sure you ask your questions or give us your feedback in the comments. The key takeaway is to understand what kind of stats are being used by the industry professionals, by registrants. And so anything being quoted in the media, even if it's on social media, and even if it's a fellow registrant who just happens to be amplifying what's circulating, make sure that there's a clear terminology and clear point of view in terms of what that stat is and what it represents. And then you have to ask yourself, is this what I need to know, or is there something at a deeper level that will help me understand this stat better? So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Real Estate Chat. More to come as far as real estate stats, markets, updates, and insight from Robert and myself. We'll see you in the next episode of Real Estate Chat.
See ya.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.